Just a second, guys. Just trying to connect. All right. Here we go. All right. Finally got it. Oh, I got it on the first try. The last few of these lives, I have been like trying to maneuver this system and we figured it out. All right. Now, before we get started, I've got some musical tracks for you. We've got a new theme song for this live, Dragon Mother Rising. So, as we let people filter in, I'm going to go ahead and fire that up.
Mother of gods and mortals, deep bosomed earth. First to rise from night's darkness, giving cosmos birth. They try to chain your power, but your strength remains. Ancient wisdom flowing through these modern veins. Dragon mother rising, feeling your heartbeat. Under concrete jungles where the wild things meet. Your children hear you calling through the urban haze. Time to wake the titans for these latter days. Dragon mother rising, candle. Ancient wisdom rising through the concrete. Feel her power rising, can't contain her. Time for sacred rising. Set her free. All various made with fertile destroying force. They pave paradise but can't stop nature's course. Your womb still bearing fruit beneath the steel and stone. Every seed a rebel, every tree a throne. Deep in your caves the old gods still hold court, while prophets preach their false report. But we remember how you armed the Titan's hand when heaven's blood watered your sacred land. Auraric say the stars still dance the ancient ways, despite their towers reaching through the haze. Sweet to the smell with your prolific rains, washing clean the empires, breaking their chains. You gave us herbs and crystals, taught us how to heal. Showed us sacred circles time cannot steal. Now as the world crumbles, we embrace your might. Dragon mother's children gathering in the night. They thought they could contain you in their books of law, but your power's rising raw and without flaw. Every seed a revolution, every spring your call. Dragon mother rising, watch their kingdoms fall. Eternal blessing, one crown with every grace. Your rebels gather now in every place. From city gardens breaking through their walls to forest stands where ancient wisdom calls. We are your children, born of star and soil, ready for sacred rebellion, ready for toil. The time has come to break their rigid reign. Let Dragon Mother's power flow again. Dragon Mother rising. All parents bound to hear your children's call. Sacred rebellion rising through it all. Your wisdom flowing through these urban veins. Dragon mother rising, breaking ancient chains.
All right, guys. Fun little music intro done. Let's get into this. I've got a lot of slides today, and there's way more than I think I'll probably even be able to get to. So, if you are interested in this topic, if you are interested in following me more in these explorations, follow that Substack link. Go ahead and subscribe over on Substack, where I put a lot more of my more formal writing. Um, putting a lot of information there, and there's also my website, but we'll get to that later. Let's get to this. So I dropped that video last night of Gaia and her sacred rebellion against the Sky Father Ouranos. Already, I've gotten some really fun comments about that, specifically people who are somewhat confused about my comparative approach, where I compare the different traditions of antiquity, specifically in this recent exploration. It's been comparing Orphic tradition to some Babylonian tradition, as well as what shows up in the book of Genesis that comes down to us now. Now, we've gone over Phanes, we've gone over Nyx, we've gone over Uranos. This is still considered part of the Auranic reign, right? This is the reign of Uranos. This is the third king of the Orphic succession, but this is coming at it from Gaia's perspective. Now, Nyx gives over rulership to Uranos. She gives him the scepter of the Erechipaios, and in this rulership, he kind of shares power with Gaia. They're the first marriage, they're united, and they start bearing children. We talked about it with Oranos before. He bears these children that at first he seems ashamed of. He seems terrified of their power. And I kind of talk about that at length in the Oranos video, where I think it's a kind of an obsession, this masculine urge to construct structure, to construct order, and we'll talk about that later in this video here too. Whereas the feminine capacity is different for the Orphics. It is, as we're going to go over here, it's about divine justice. We talked about it in the video briefly last night. The Titan daughters are essentially the genesis of the law, right? They are the ones who create and draft the cosmic laws, and the Titanic sons are the ones who enforce it. And so we see that kind of reflected in the mother and father in this pair. And so there's some really interesting archetypes for us to explore. Um, and it's really intriguing, and I'm kind of surprised nobody's really talking about this. I couldn't find much on it, and so we're here we go. It's not new material by any means, but it's something that I don't think people are talking about very much. So let's get into it. So this is an exploration of the divine justice and divine suppression, as it refers to the feminine within the Orphic Rhapsodies. So who is Gaia? If you didn't watch the video last night, please go do after you're done hanging out here with me today. But Gaia, in Greek mythology, she's the personification of the earth. She's the primordial earth mother. She's born from the cosmic void, the womb of Nyx. The first two children that Nyx basically bears in the Orphic tradition are Uranos, the sky, and Gaia, the earth. At first, she's the divine partner of the original celestial marriage, the first marriage. And as the first divine partner, she's the progenitor of everything that comes into being on the material side of things. And we talked about Nyx as being the womb of and mother of all gods and of all men eventually. But Gaia is that next form of refinement, and we're going to talk about that at length today as well. Gaia and Nyx appear to be different forms of being. But to the Orphics, it's not necessarily that way. Now, most people are looking at Greek mythology through what I call the Hesiod lineage. It's kind of this Hesiodic view, where Hesiod has these generations. He's got this long table of this god begets this god, and then this is how he kind of structures out the universe. Now, Hesiod and Orpheus and the Orphic corpus, this is all poetic. So it's just a matter of their perspective, and the metaphysics are a little bit different for Hesiod than they would be from the Orphic perspective. So what does Gaia basically do? She's a matrix of manifestation within the material. She's the guardian of divine potential, right? Uranos is the structure. Uranos is the boundary keeper. He's the one who puts up the guardrails for existence, right? Gaia just produces. She produces these, if we see it in their first progeny within the Cyclopes, these basically personifications of cosmic force unchained. Now, the Cyclopes are a little bit more like refined energy. The Hecaton Kyries are just raw power, not chain, not they're not restrained by any shape or stretch of the imagination. And so this frustrates Uranos. Uranos's job is to produce order. And he's got this, we talked about it a little bit in the Nyx and a little bit in the post Oranos video, he gets a bug in his ear from prophecy from his mother Nyx about his downfall. Essentially, he can't stand this, right? So he acts against it. He needs to uphold order. That is his nature. That is what he is meant to do. And from that, he's going to act out what I consider to be the first instance of sin, right? This is the first cosmic instance of doing something that is not in alignment with the potential of the universe. Hesiod certainly looks at it like that, and the Orphic Rhapsodies tend to look at it like that, but it's a little bit veiled. I think that if we look at it from a traditional Western idea of sin, we're missing the point. It's a necessary movement, and we'll kind of talk about that. But moving on, she's an instigator of Sacred Rebellion, which is what we're going to talk about a lot today, and she's the protector of cosmic evolution. These are just the basic functions of how she works within the metaphysics of the Orphic tradition. So, the role of the feminine here. In the Orphic narrative, Gaia embodies the feminine principle as the very embodiment of generative justice, a force that moves beyond just creation. Right? Often we think of these fertility goddesses, at least in the Western tradition, the way that they're portrayed is just generative. They just spit out babies. That's not necessarily the case. They're also guardians. They are also the generators of justice, of balance, of male overreach. And you see with the suppression of the divine feminine over time, the stripping away of that justice, and then more unchained, rigid structures, hierarchies that support a more masculine agenda. And that is imbalanced, and we see that happening in our world. We see that happening very much so today, and have been for the better part of the last 2 to 3,000, maybe 4,000 years since this more monistic view comes into being in changing the way that people are thinking. So her actions basically counteract what Ouranos is doing. She's not merely just a maternal protector, but she's a fundamental principle of theological evolution. She is the counterpoint to what he's doing in the process. His instigation of this, by kind of essentially pissing her off, is what creates the tension that is necessary for further levels of order to be produced by the next generation. So by Kronos, and then by Zeus, and then by Dionysus, and so on. So it's this unfolding, this tit for tat, this back and forth, creating this kind of metaphysical tension that they are doing. And this is just, this is what the ancients are talking about from a metaphysics standpoint. This is what they are thinking when they're writing this. Now it's all veiled in poetics and in allegory, but the story does have that poetic tension in it. So I'm going to go ahead and read what we are looking at in the Orphic Rhapsodies. But when Ouranos imprisoned her sons, Gaia was greatly distressed, so she then gave birth to 7 lovely daughters and 7 kingly sons. So the kingly aspect is really important because Ouranos wears the crown, so his sons are very much like him. And the daughters are very much like Gaia, very much like we'll talk about this in the Homeric perspective, but this lovely aspect is one that's very important. Looks like we've got an ad coming up here. You guys can skip those if you want to. So she gives birth to the Cyclopes, the Hecatonchires, then the Titans. But the Titans are a different level of order. The Titans are more refined. They're considered the shining ones. I don't want to spend too much time on them because I'm going to do another separate piece on them. This is more about Gaia, but we get law-giving Themis, gentle Tethys, the mother of Kypris, Mnemosyne. She's the mother of the Musai, of Thea, Dione. One of the things that, and I want to touch on this real quick, that gets really confusing if you start mixing Hesiod and Orpheus is who generates who. Who is the mother or father of this particular person? And they have differing opinions on this matter. They have very differing opinions on the matter. And what we see in the Orphics is that there's not a lot of actual begetting as much as there is further metaphysical refinement of the same base concept. And we see that here in the sons and the daughters. The sons are just further refined versions of Uranus and a further fracturing, kind of like a fractal of his power. So each one of them holding kind of a piece of what the father has, and Kronos being essentially the most like him. So they bring forth these titans. She comes to them. Of all of these mighty sons and daughters of Earth, it was Kronos who Nyx cherished and cultivated. Now, Hesiod doesn't talk about Nyx in this context, but the Orphics, they do. Nyx is behind the scenes in all of it. She is behind putting the prophecy in the ear of Uranus that triggers him into this activity, and she is also here in the ear of Kronos. She also favors Zeus later on. She and Gaia, both behind the scenes, are the instigators of sacred revolution. And so so Gaia pleads with the Titans to overthrow their father for having cast her progeny into Tartarus, and all the siblings kind of start to rally over time. Hesiod takes a little bit more time to talk about this than what we have in the Orphic Rhapsodies, but it basically says the all of them, all the sons and daughters except for Okeanos, rallied to her aid. The picture that they have of this is one of Gaia's form, essentially under stress, under extreme stress. She is groaning all the time because essentially what Uranus has done, in the words of the poets, has basically shoved those children back into her bosom. So Tartarus is within her; it's held within her in some cases, and so he's basically plugged her up with these children that have already been born, and through that stress, we get these images of the earth cracking, groaning under her stress and her anger over this. There's intense wailing and agony, and so she's upset, reasonably so. The Titans also are aware of this. They're aware of this. They can hear it, and eventually they side with their mother. So, the plot angered the mighty god. The mighty god is what that's the translation here. So we're talking about Kronos. Um, or no, actually, that's Okeanos. Okeanos is the only one who doesn't join them, so he kind of just sits there and broods in his palace. So then she gives the adamantine sickle. She births this adamantine sickle, gives it to Kronos as the weapon. Kronos gets all of his brothers around. They pin him down and they lop off his generative capacity. They basically cut off his phallus. And from that, it says the members of Uranus, the members, flew through the air into the wine dark sea and swirled about the restless blue waters, forming a wondrous foam, out of which emerged beautiful heavenly Aphrodite. Now, as we see here, this is Aphrodite Urania, the queen of heaven, the mother of harmony. And as she was born, Xylos and Apate took her into their care. So we see here the generation of yet another almost self-generated female form. She basically comes from the foam that is generated from the cast-off blood. The blood drips out all over the earth. In some cases, creating more races of giants, which I think in many cases, if we look at this from a comparative perspective, relates to the angels or Nephilim in some cases. These beings of immense power, not human. In some cases, the Nephilim, of course, within the Judaic traditions, are the breeding of humans and men. But if we're talking about just the idea of the sons of God, the sons of heaven, then what we're looking at from an Orphic perspective are the sons of Uranus. That could mean the Titans, that could mean the Cyclopes, that could mean the Hecatonchires, or the Gigantes, which are basically just the giants that are formed from this cutting, this severing of Uranus. This is the severing of Uranus from Earth and the creation of a new layer of order. That's what's happening in this moment. And this is all instigated again by Gaia. This is instigated by her need to restore justice, to restore divine balance, and to enact the next level of cosmic evolution. Let's check in with the. I'm gonna go ahead and check in with the chat room here, see if we've got anything. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to get at me and ask whatever you want. Oh, no problem, Brooke. Just yeah, listen at your leisure, guys. I'm glad that so many have been able to join me today. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Just checking out some of the chats. The chosen DNA that will resist the advancement without permission. Nice. Yeah, I mean, there's something to it. There is something to it. There are some of us who seem inclined towards this divine justice, and some of us who are more inclined to the rigid structure of order. I don't think that any one way is necessarily right or bad as much as it is imbalanced at times. And we are seeing a time where that imbalance is creating a lot of stress. We see that within the earth herself. You see that in all of the natural disasters, this groaning and wailing about the shutting up of these cosmic forces as we enact this very Ouranic oppression of the natural world through our perceived superiority. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the metaphysical principles of Gaia's motherhood. So, within the Orphic account, the divine figure of Gaia emerges as a primal and powerful maternal force whose act of birth contains crucial metaphysical principles. She has a generative necessity that gives rise to cosmic plurality. So, this idea of the one birthing the many. She's manifesting the latent potential that is within Oranos. Their union is her receiving the imagery that Oranos receives through the higher levels of existence, like his essentially his father, Phanes. Now, this is all from the Orphic perspective. Hesiod's probably got different potential or different ideas about that, but it's all this generative cycle, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Her maternal wisdom is marked by this recognition and this cycle, this pattern, and we'll see it play out of divine justice. Whenever one of these male figures gets out of balance, she checks. She, in all of her different variations, her aspects, is going to check that. She's going to rise up. She's going to create cosmic or dynamic tension within the poetry, within the story, and she's going to essentially right the ship and test each one of these male figures, from Oranos to Kronos to Zeus. It's interesting. The Bible talks about in the Torah, the sins of the father will be followed to the second and third generations. Now, the third generation is Zeus. So even in Zeus, who eventually basically bucks this trend, we see the same sins occur, and we'll talk about those. But I wanted to talk really quickly from the Homeric perspective. What does Homer have to say of this? So Homer, one of the highest and most blessed of the poets, right? Um, Says, "To Gaia, the earth, the mother of all, I will sing of well-founded Gaia, mother of all and eldest of all beings. She feeds all the creatures that are in the worlds, all that go upon the goodly land, and all that are in the paths of the sea, and all that fly. All these are fed of her store. Through you, O Queen, men are blessed in their children and blessed in their harvests, and to you it belongs to give means of life to mortal men and to take it away. Happy is the man whom you delight to honor. He has all things abundantly. His fruitful land is laden with corn, his pastures are covered with cattle, and his house is filled with good things. Such men rule orderly in their cities of fair women, great riches and wealth follows them. Their sons exult with ever fresh delight, and their daughters, in flower laden bands, play and skip merrily over the soft flowers of the field. Thus it is with those whom you honor, O holy goddess. Bountiful spirit, hail mother of the gods, Theon Mater, wife of starry Oranos, freely bestow upon me for this my song substance that cheers the heart." Now, sounds really good. Like, if we honor this presence, if we honor this divine mother, it seems like we are going to be well blessed. Homer speaks of this very clearly. This is what the fruits of honoring the divine feminine potential are. So if we are honoring this correctly, we have all of these great things coming to us. But holy hell, if we don't honor it, let's take a look at what's coming. Let's take a look at what Gaia can do. So Gaia has a response to Uranus, right? She responds to the imprisonment of her children, not through a chaotic order like we see in Tiamat, and we will touch on her in a little bit, but she has a much more measured response. It's strategic, it's planned. She works through prophecy, through other agents. A principle where divine order sometimes requires the overthrow of existence as it is. So she represents the metaphysical aspect of necessary rebellion. Um, and Uranus, again, that structure. So Gaia's plea to the Titans to overthrow their father activates this cosmic principle, revealing the necessity of opposition for balance, the correction of what Uranus is, which is divine excess, his overreach of power. He was handed the power of the scepter of Eurycopios from Nyx. She gave it willingly. Uranus clings to it. He's afraid of giving it up. He's afraid of giving it up. Now, Phanes, again, both male and female as a deity, gives it up freely. But then as we see this split, Nyx also follows suit, gives it up freely. Uranus and Gaia kind of split that archetype of male and female, and they're no longer one. They're seen as kind of a duality. We see a dynamic tension between the two. We see this dynamic tension. And it's in that the masculine principle starts to divert from this willingness to give up power. There's a fear of it. And he falls for that. But also inversely, Gaia is going to essentially bring out that female divergence, which is resistance. It's that power of resistance against excess. So she demonstrates the wisdom of resistance. And then when they come toe to toe, we get the balance of cosmic forces for a greater level of cosmic order. Shiva hand 7437 Gaia of high light. Thanks for chiming in, everybody. I really appreciate the comments. Please feel free to ask questions as we go along. So that's this idea of the sacred rebellion. Now, what does it mean? What are we looking at here? And I tried to draw up some pictures to kind of evoke this. So if Uranus is rigid order and Gaia is cosmic justice, then what comes of that is the divine consciousness that synthesizes in Kronos. Kronos becomes this third element, and as he cuts off the generative potential of Uranus, he assumes the mantle of power, but he also assumes the sins of, and that is something that Kronos we see replays the same tale. He starts swallowing his children. What does Gaia do in this case when Kronos starts to exhibit the same exact behavior? She hides Zeus along with Rhea, who is essentially to the Orphics another instance of Gaia, another instance of Nyx. It's the same goddess working on different levels of reality, the same basic force. And Zeus, again, another one of those levels of divine order in a more refined aspect. So we see it, this dialectic, this tension. Uranus' rigid order, the suppression of divine potential, the imprisonment of the cosmic forces for his own benefit, the stagnation of divine evolution. Whenever we get into systems of rigid order, what happens is stagnation. And so chaos must enter into this equation in order to shake things up, to break up the rigidity of divine order. And that's what that feminine principle is built for. That's what its major function is in the metaphysics of the Orphics. So Gaia represents the antithesis of Uranus, the liberation of that divine potential, the activation of cosmic justice and balance, the necessity to transform. We can't stay the same forever. We have to evolve, we have to change. And then, of course, that new order is Kronos. That's what is going to be as this story keeps moving along. Absolutely. I love sharing this stuff, guys. Thanks. Keep chiming in. Keep chiming in. So Within the Orphic account, Gaia emerges as the primal mother, giving birth to the unruly Cyclops, the Hundred Handers. We've kind of been over that. She represents generative necessity, maternal wisdom, the emergence of divine plurality, the manifestation of cosmic potential, the birth of differentiated being. Um, she's the protector of cosmic order, and she preserves the generative potential, because if that overbearing rigid structure gets a hold of things, it chokes out the possibility of essentially creating something new. So I want to look at it, how she responds to each one of these male overreaches, these masculine overreaches. So in the Ouranic rebellion, Ouranos imprisons the Cyclopes, the Hecatonchires, the legitimate offspring of Gaia, and he shoves them in Tartarus, the dark, deepest pit within her bosom, and he's suppressing their divine potential and violating Gaia's maternal rights. Well, what does Gaia do? She crafts this sickle capable of essentially killing the gods. Um, and she starts to work through agents. She works through her children. She doesn't attack him directly. And we see this as a kind of a center point between what later comes out in the inert goddess form in Genesis and the very overt goddess form in Tiamat in Babylon. So on both sides of where we are in this Orphic conversation, there are complete opposites of what we're doing. And Gaia is this, in at least in the Orphic, this kind of like perfectly measured, very thoughtful, very demure, very mindful spirit that is planning and acts. She doesn't act through direct force, but she knows what to do. She knows how it's going to go down, and she will play you. So she arms Kronos with the sickle because Kronos is exhibiting some of those same qualities that Ouranos has. He's ambitious. He kind of is irritated with his own father. She sees the opportunity for basically a perfect weapon. And she has him basically rally all of his brothers and sisters to the cause, and he gets to it. So what comes from that? What's the cosmic result? The birth of a divine, a new order. The Titans, they are now in control. They start populating. What we're looking at in the levels of existence for Orphic tradition is basically light as the first principle within Fanes. Then we get the dark from Nyx and all the things that come from that, and then we get these cosmic forces from Gaia and Ouranos, the Cyclopes, the Hecatonchires. These are like raw potential manifested powers, right? Um, are you having trouble hearing me there, Rose? But if so, I can always turn up the volume a little bit. So from that, from the Ouranic primal forces, we get the Titans. These are celestial forms of power, very celestial forms of power, and it's a new refinement of order. We see the divine laws come about, the divine cosmic order come about through the daughters, and then the enforcing of those things. Different Titans have different powers, and then we see further refinement. Once the Titans are overthrown, we see that in the Olympian gods as well. So let's take a look at how Gaia continues. So her story doesn't end with just this rebellion with Ouranos. She continues and persists and makes sure that there is a check and balance against any male overreach within the tradition. I've got some pieces here from Hesiod, and he used to hide them all away in a secret place of Gaia. So as soon as each was born, and would not suffer them to come up into the light, and Ouranos rejoiced in his evil doing. But vast Gaia groaned within, being straitened, and she made the element of grey flint and shaped a great sickle, and told her plan to her dear sons. And she spoke, cheering them, while she was vexed in her dear heart. My children, gotten of a sinful father, if you will obey me, we should punish the vile outrage of your father, for he first thought of doing shameful things. I talk about that. That's the reason for the title of the Ouranos video. Is Hesiod is very clear that he thinks that Ouranos is basically the genesis for the first shameful deed. The first shameful deed. Now, the Orphic Rhapsodies, they spin it a little bit differently, but I think that's because there is a more monistic tendency within the Orphics. They are already moving towards this idea of a one being. And Hesiod, I think it's not super clear, but to me, he is operating more on a more polytheistic lens. But in the Orphic Rhapsodies, uh, we've kind of already covered that, so I'm not going to go over it again. I'm not going to keep reading you the same pieces, but they essentially they all agree he's done wrong, and so they move to depose him. But what happens? Um, Kronos follows suit. He has no recourse here. Really, he commits another sin. Deposing the father is yet another sin. So we're stacking cosmic imbalance on cosmic imbalance. Now, Kronos doesn't outright kill his father. This isn't a case of patricide. This isn't a case of him killing, and Uranus doesn't necessarily kill the Cyclopes or the Hecatonchires, but they act in a way that is counter to order. Now, Gaia is this element of resistance. It's resistance to imbalance, to overreach, to divine excess, but this order is paramount, even for her. Even for her, there has to be a rigid cosmic structure, but it has to be torn down occasionally and then rebuilt. So Kronos does the same thing. He rebuilds. They start having more Titans. There's all different levels of Titans that come about after the fall of Uranus. You see Hyperion and Thea. They give birth to Helios, Selene, Eos, the Dawn. You see all these second generation Titans come about, and so they basically build what is considered by many of the Greek authors the first golden age, where there is potentially even humans around. There are human beings who are existing in this time, depending upon which author you subscribe to at the time. But Kronos echoes the sins of his father. He gets a prophecy from Gaia, just like Nyx gives to Uranus. He gets a prophecy that he's going to lose his power, and he creates the same thing. Only this time, he doesn't take the children and shove them back in the mother. He eats them, he swallows them. And this is a really interesting thing within the Orphic tradition and within the Greek mythos, anyways. This act of swallowing is something that comes up again and again and again from this point on. This absorption of the children is an attempt to essentially take their power. And we see Zeus do this a lot, and we see him eventually do it to birth a new universe. And so he starts swallowing the children. Gaia gets involved in this, probably because Nyx is involved as well. Nyx favored Kronos. She got him involved in this overthrow. And from that point on, we see the same repeating. And I marked here, and I talked about this earlier, the sins of the father follow through three generations. Uranus sins, Kronos sins, Zeus sins, and finally, in the Orphic mode, it's Dionysus who has his own issues, but he seems to be the fulfillment of the cosmic balance tipping back to center. He is the final fulfillment of the correction that Gaia instigates. So, in a way, we see this slowly through each generation trickling down. So, what does she do? She provides a prophetic warning to Rhea, which is her daughter, who basically acts as she did for Uranus, Rhea with Kronos. She provides the strategic counsel and arranges for the protection of Zeus, the hiding him within the cave. And she hides Zeus in Crete. She guards him. She creates entities to guard him. The Coretes, they stand outside the cave and they bang. They create all this clamor so that Kronos can't find or hear the baby, because Zeus is destined to be the one to overthrow Kronos. What is the result? So she moves against Kronos, her own son, and she essentially gives rise to Zeus. She even, in some cases, it depends on the author, but some cases it's Nyx who provides the information of how to get the children out of Kronos. In some cases it's Rhea, some cases it's Gaia. As we see with the Orphics, these are all the same being, just in different levels of order. The result, the Olympians take over. So Kronos learned from Gaia and starry Ouranos that he was destined to be overcome by his own son. Strong though he was, though the contriving of great Zeus. After that, the strength and glorious limbs of the prince increased quickly, and as the years rolled on, great Kronos the wily was beguiled by the deep suggestions of Gaia. So she's planting this in him, right? She's telling him that he's going to be overthrown. The why behind this, it really does elude me, other than the fact that these poets are allegorizing a metaphysical back and forth, this dynamic tension of the creation of order and chaos, and that cyclical generation of material manifest reality. So, what does Hesiod say? But when she was about to bear Zeus, the father of the gods and men, then she besought her own dear parents, Gaia and the starry Ouranos, to devise some plan with her that the birth of her dear child might be concealed, that his retribution might overtake great and crafty Kronos, for his own father and also for the children whom he had swallowed down. Let's check in with the chat here. Oh yeah. Okay, so we're getting into what's been going on with us here as humans. I think it's in many ways this is prophetic, right? This is not necessarily a historical account. I think this is prophetic. It is theological. It is metaphysical, but it is also telling us what we can expect from our own life here on on Earth. What are we doing? What are we going to encounter? This interplay between this dynamic tension between male and female, and it's constantly moving like this. And when we are out of balance in our own personal life, if we drift too far to the feminine or drift too far to the masculine, and we don't find that sweet spot, like the Pythagoreans call synthesis, that third piece, the triangle, the most stable form, then we have trouble. We generate suffering of some kind, and we see that play out in these stories. So this continues with Zeus. After Zeus overthrows Kronos, balance is kind of restored. We see in the Orphic tradition Zeus swallows Phanes, or in some other cases in the Orphic tradition, I can't remember if it's the Hieronymian or the Eudemian. He swallows either the phallus of Ouranos, but it's this idea of swallowing the previous power in order to generate a new one. So Gaia perceives the same seed of injustice acting within Zeus, particularly in her defense of the older primordial children. So remember, Kronos lops off the generative potential, the phallus of Ouranos, and then from that blood, more giants, more chaotic beasts are unleashed upon the world. And Zeus doesn't like this. He's a product of order. He is the height of divine mind. That is his job. So he has to bring this under control. After the war against the Titans, there's a brief war, a skirmish with the Gigantes, and Zeus is basically going at them full bore. Gaia does not like this. Leave my children alone, she says. Stop. And so she goes and she essentially she mates with Tartarus itself and brings forth this draconic being, the Typhoeus. And this is a divine challenger. And what this is a test for Zeus. What is Zeus going to do when she rises up in Sacred Rebellion? Is he going to make the same mistake? Is he going to hurt his children? Is he going to resist the fact that he is going to have to willingly give over power to his own son? So she crafts a sacred drug. She gets a bunch of these herbs, and she's basically aiming to give the giants immortality. So she supports the resistance again. She creates a cosmic tension. She copulates with Tartarus, bears Typhoeus, and then she tests Zeus. What are you going to do? What are you going to do, Zeus? But when Zeus had driven the Titans from heaven, huge Gaia bare her youngest child Typhoeus of the love of Tartarus and the golden aid of Aphrodite. Remember, Aphrodite, Titanic. Aphrodite is not an Olympian. Aphrodite is not an Olympian. I repeat, not an Olympian. Now there was an oracle among the gods that they themselves would not be able to destroy any of the Gigantes, but would finish them off only with the help of some mortal ally. When Gaia learned of this, she sought a drug that would prevent their destruction even by mortal hands. But Zeus barred the appearance of the dawn, of the moon, and of Helios, and chopped up the drug himself before Gaia could find it. So he made it dark. The defeat of the Gigantes by the gods angered Gaia all the more, and so she had intercourse with Tartaros and bore forth Typhoeus. And so this plays out again in the Dionysiaca by Nonus of Panopolis. And so I would recommend you check this out. There is a really great copy of it that just came out, Tales of Dionysus. It's the full English translation of it by multiple authors. So each chapter of it is a new author translating their own piece of this epic poetry. It's like the last piece of Greek epic poetry to come out of late antiquity. And it's all about Dionysus. It's all about how he came about. And it's really, really amazing. But this is like the basic beginning of it. He says, He, Zeus, laid his celestial weapons well hidden with his lightning in a deep cavern. He does this because he falls in love with a mortal, with Europa, and he wants to go copulate with her. He wants to essentially, do the Zeus thing. He needs to. He loves creation so much he can't resist it. And this is this love of the father that I think is so misunderstood about Zeus. Everybody's like, oh, he's this like just libidinous crazy man who can't contain himself. That's true, but it's a metaphysical allegory. It's about this deep love of the Father for creation. He can't get enough of it. There is this sense that Zeus himself loves us so that he can't help himself. So what he does, he sees Europa, gotta have it. He hides his weapons because he can't take mortal form if he's holding on to his weapons to the lightning bolts. So he hides them underground. Very irresponsible. Do not leave your weapons around for your children to find them, Zeus. From underground, the thunderbolts belched out smoke, and the white cliff was blackened. Hidden sparks from a fire-barbed arrow heated the water springs, torrents boiling with foam, and steam poured down the Mygdonian gorge until it boomed again. Then, at a nod from his mother, the earth Gaia, Typhoeus stretched out his hands and stole the snowy tools of Zeus, the tools of fire. And he leapt up, hearing the music of Cadmus, and dragged along his viperish feet. He left the cave with the flaming weapons of Zeus with Mother Gaia to keep them. Now, in the story, Typhoeus wreaks havoc. He gets a hold of the weapons of Zeus, and Zeus is basically powerless because in the story, it's the sinews of Zeus that he leaves behind. So there's like this essence of Zeus that he leaves behind that Typhoeus gets so that he can handle the thunderbolts, because nobody can handle it without that. And Zeus has to rely on mortal aid in order to get it back, so he calls on Cadmus. And so we see this playing out again. This is in deeper layers of the story. Gaia continues to be a check and balance, a sacred rebel. And so we've kind of talked about this already. With the Gigantomachy, she is fighting against the suppression of chthonic powers. She bears more giants, essentially receiving the blood from Ouranos that is spilled, and she supports the side of the resistance, always the side of the resistance. And she guards her offspring. And this is the final test of Zeus. When he gets his power back, what is he going to do? Is he going to do the right thing? And it turns out pretty much that's what he does, which is why Gaia stops messing with him. She does, though, go and mess with Dionysus. So now that Zeus has passed the test, now Dionysus has to pass the test. And let that be a lesson to all of us when we are in our most masculine and we are trying to force a rigid order on the earth. We will be tested in those moments. We will absolutely be tested when we move against that flow. That is the receptivity of Gaia. Hera addressed her deceitful prayers to All Mother Gaia, drying out upon the doings of Zeus and the valor of Dionysus, who had destroyed that cloud of numberless earthborn Indians. And when the life-bringing mother heard that the son of Semele had wiped out the Indian nation with speedy fate, she groaned still more, thinking of her children. Then she armed all around Bacchus the mountain ranging tribes of Gigantes. So these giants, they persist even after the flood of Deucalion. These giants are still around. So this idea in Genesis of the Nephilim being squelched by the flood, they make it through somehow. There's still Nephilim about. If you're thinking about this from different cultural perspectives, the flood of Deucalion, the flood of Noah, they're both about essentially wiping out the bad blood of previous orders of humanity in order to start fresh. But they're still around. Gaia's still around. These giants are always around in order to strike back against this divine excess. These tribes of Gigantes, Earth's own brood, and goaded her own sons to battle. My sons, make your attack with high towering rocks against cluster garland Dionysus. Catch this Indian slayer, this destroyer of my family, this son of Zeus, and let me not see him ruling with Zeus, a bastard monarch of Olympus. Bind him, bind Bacchus. Bind him fast, that he may attend to the chamber when I bestow Hebe and Porphyrion as a wife, and give Cytherea to Chthonios, when I sing Bright Eyes, the bedfellow of Enceladus, and Artemis of Alcyonus. Bring Dionysus to me, that I may enrage Kronian when he sees Laios a slave and the captive of my spear, or wound him with cutting steel, and kill him for me like Zagreus, that one may say, God or mortal, that Gaia, in her anger, has twice armed her slayers against the breed of Cronides, the older Titans, against the former Dionysus, Zagreus, the younger Gigantes against Dionysus later born. And with these words she excited all of the host of the Gigantes and the battalions of the Giganese, set forth to war. So here she is testing Dionysus as well. Here she is testing Dionysus as well. So what do we see in her basic pattern? What does she do with all these male forms? She's the foundation of being, she's the matrix of manifestation. So from her everything comes. But she's also the underlying sacred thread of power. She is the bearer of cosmic justice. The male aspect of this is simply just the force. It's the enforcer of what she says, essentially, what she is. And then if they don't fall in line with that cosmic justice, she is the enforcer of revolution. And she will find somebody else to do the job if you don't do it to her liking. Now, what does this look like as we go through the ages? When we take a look at Mary, there's a couple of things within the Bible. Gaia protects Zeus from Kronos, while Mary protects another divine child from King Herod. Another classic male overreach, doesn't want to give up his power, hears this prophecy of a child that is going to come about and end his reign. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? We just talked about Uranus having that. Could mean that they were all talking about the same thing. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, the dragon mother. We see it in Revelations as well. Below heaven, the earth, the dragon. This is the imagery of Tiamat. This is an echo from ancient Babylon and Sumeria. We see it also in the Gnostics. We see it in the Kabbalah with the Shekinah. But slowly and certainly, what we see is the suppression or the veiling of Gaia, of the mother. Now let's look at what it looks like from Tiamat. Tiamat is active. She is in direct combat. She is chaotic. She breeds chaotic forces. Mother, who forms everything, supplied irresistible weapons and gave birth to giant serpents. They had sharp teeth. They were merciless, with poison instead of blood, and she filled their bodies. She created the Hydra, the dragon, the hairy hero, the great demon, the savage dog, and the scorpion man, fierce demons and the fish man and the bull man, carriers of merciless weapons, fearless in the face of battle. She acts through direct combat. She breeds chaotic forces. What's her fate when faced with this? Well, Marduk comes up and he splits her in two like a dried fish. One half of her he set up and stretched out as the heavens. He stretched the skin and appointed a watch. Tiamat's fate, in direct conflict, in acting without measure, in acting in this just brutality of a way, is met with the same force. She's met with the same force, and she is no more. She's crushed by this idea of Marduk. Gaia's different. Gaia's a little different. But when Ouranos imprisoned her sons, Gaia was greatly distressed, so she goes to them and she says, "Hey, help me out here." So she makes the gray flint. She thinks. She's very measured. She acts and approaches through strategic planning, and she works through agents. She doesn't go into direct conflict. She's not going to fight Ouranos through direct conflict. She gets Kronos to do the work. She plans and she works through prophecy. She creates cosmic order through careful revelation. And what's her fate? She survives. She survives in her tradition, and she doesn't get pushed aside. In fact, even Zeus doesn't act, without the fear of Gaia or Nyx. It's stated very clearly in Hesiod and in Orpheus as well that Zeus does not move against Gaia. So from this perspective, we have this older perspective of this brute force goddess who gets crushed. The measured response wins. But what do we see in Genesis? We see the veiled mother, Tehom. We talk about this. I talked about this a little bit in the video last night, but in Genesis, it's stripped. There is no name of the goddess. It's just the deep. Which, if you're a fan of the boys on on Amazon Prime, it's dirty. Don't do her dirty like that. The earth was formless and void. Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed. She has no direct speech. She only brings forth and generates on command from the male aspect. Earth's fate, in this case, to be used by humans, to be ruled over, to be crushed underneath our jackboots as we take in more excess, more and more divine excess. It's my belief that we are very much following in that Ouranic excess. And that's why we see the earth itself moving in its own rebellion and resistance to what we have essentially instilled, which is an over excess, a rigid structure of dominion and order. We have a lot to learn. Another couple of things I want to touch on. We're getting close to the end here, guys, and I thank you for bringing all the comments and everything. I love to see everybody engaging in the comments, and I hope you're getting everything that you want out of this. So Hesiod, I talked about this a little bit. There's a genealogical flow. Chaos gives birth to Nyx, to Erebos. Gaia is like self-emergent in Hesiod. In the Orphic tradition, she's generated from Nyx and Phanes. From this union, they gave birth to the Titans, the Cyclopes, the Hecatonchires, then the Titans, the Olympian gods, and so on. It's a genealogical flow. This is very much family tree. Who's got what? So there's kind of I don't want to say a masculine form of direction, but this is very much in line with what we see in Genesis. So and so begat who, so and so begat who, and so on. And they're different orders of being. They're different beings. Different beings. But the Orphic is like nesting dolls. It's like Russian nesting dolls. Nyx acts as the primal level. She's pure potentiality. She's pre-cosmic darkness. She's the matrix of all becoming, and she's undifferentiated potential. From Gaia, she's the cosmic level. So from that primordial level, she's cosmic. She's materialized potential. She's the physical cosmos. She's the ground of manifestation. She's manifested matter, the mother. Rhea, the next level of this force, is planetary. She's dynamic flow. She counteracts the flow of time, the way that Kronos is time. She's cosmic movement and divine generation. She is the generative power. And as we move further down the line, we get Demeter. And then eventually Cora, or Persephone. She's terrestrial, living matter, Earth's fertility, the physical generation or the life force itself. On the other side of things, we have the male aspect. They are the refinement of form and activity, whereas the feminine are the refinement of matter and receptivity. From Phanes, we get the first manifestation of divine light, cosmic revelation. It's that bursting of light to reveal what is within and concealed within the darkness. With Oranos, we get the ordering principle, the celestial spheres, the cosmic boundaries. That's his function. He is structure. So he is the structure to the manifested matter. So he gives form. Otherwise, what we see when Gaia does her thing all by herself is these monstrous cosmic forms that just burst out and they just run ragged all over everything. Oranos is meant to be the corralling of those things so that they are poured into or refined into new layers of order. He didn't do his job though. So Kronos had to come about and do it. Kronos is the planetary form of it there. Dynamic change, time and succession. He's transformation. And we see that. He is the bearer of the sickle. He is the grim reaper. He is time. He is movement. And he doesn't get his generative faculty stripped from him. In fact, he's an agricultural god. He is Saturn. He is that final layer before we get to all of those upper layers of reality. He's that final layer. And Zeus is the terrestrial, the match to Demeter. The divine mind, cosmic order, and governance, intelligence. What we see when we come out of these four into the next layer is Cora and Persephone, and then, of course, Dionysus, which we will get to eventually. We will get to all of these gods in time, as long as you guys keep bringing me some attention. I will keep doing this as long as you guys are interested. So the Orphic understanding is really interesting. Orphic understanding is divine essence, the same power manifesting at different levels. It's a progressive refinement of primal forces. It's the continuous divine presence. It's not this guy comes and goes and then gets replaced. It's just him in a different form, her in a different form. There is a cosmic structure that's hierarchical, but also unified. It's all the same thing, but it's manifesting in hierarchical disguises, if you will. Each level contains everything above it in a further refined form. Each thing's, as Proclus would say, all things within all things in different admixtures. It's progressive manifestation into higher and higher condensed forms of matter. And it's what we are, essentially. That's what the Orphic understanding is. Even us as humans, we are a more refined version of Dionysus. From Hesiod, it's different. It's divine power transferred through generations. The power moves. It moves into different beings. And it's a thing of conflict and succession. Versus transformation and evolution. If you look at it the Orphic way, these forces, they seem to be in conflict, but in that conflict, in that tension, create a synthesis and create something new. So it's creative instead of destructive. Creation always has an element of destruction in it anyways, but it's not a it's a continued divine presence. It's the first instance where we start to see the Greeks look at things from a more monistic view, where it's a more almost proto-monotheism with them. In the hymn to Zeus, we start to see them quite a few hundred years before we have the Judaic takeover of the Hellenized world. So they were working on it, and I think they get it really from the New Kingdom in Egypt, from the Ramesseid theologians in Egypt, and it's really interesting things. If you guys want to dig into a lot of this, there's plenty of great materials. If you have any questions about what piece you want to talk about, go ahead and just shoot me a message here on the platform. And that's where we're at. That's where we're at today. That's all I got for Gaia and her Sacred Rebellion today. It's been a very, very, very busy week, but I appreciate each and every one of you for coming and joining me in this live stream. I can't wait to get back at it next week. We are going to be talking about Inanna again, taking a break from the Orphic and going back to Inanna and the Seven Gates. We talked about the descent last week. This week we're going to be talking about her work or her marriage with Dumuzid, her falling in love with him, her choices she has to make when the demons basically say that she has to choose. She's going to find Dumuzid on her throne. And we're going to relate what that has to say about the shepherd god of ancient Babylon and how that reflects on what we see in Genesis and in the later traditions. If you guys have any questions, I'll stick around for a little bit and just answer some questions. Do, do, do. If you have anything at all for me, I am open and ready. Looks like you guys really got after it in the chat. I'm trying to catch up. Holy. Do I have a place to set an appointment with me? What kind of an appointment would you like? What would you just you just want to chat? What are you looking for there, Core? I mean, I'm open to talking to any one of the listeners here at any time. If it's about something about the content that I'm creating, I don't offer services really as far as metaphysical. Um, there are so many creators out there doing that. Okay, consult. I write metaphysical musings through many teachings and would love to just chat with you and explore some things. Yeah, go ahead and write me on the email that I have here. I'll go ahead and pop it in here, and we'll figure something out. And if you want to maybe come on the Volcas Mysticae sometime, we can chat on the podcast as well. But yeah, if anybody wants to write me at that email as well, please feel free. If you have any other additional questions that you want to talk about, if it's regarding this material or something else you've seen on the channel or something you have a question with about in regards to this material. I have been studying a lot of this um, over the last 2 decades, and so I have quite a bit of this locked up in the old dome, but I'm always willing to take your questions and do some live streams too, like this. Um, a topic: what are your thoughts on Islamic creatures? I am not very well versed on the Islamic side of things. It's something that I hope to get to eventually, but there's such a wealth of information out there when it comes to the metaphysical. And just a little background for you guys: most of my time now is spent in Greco Egyptian theurgy, in Greco Egyptian mythology, with some crossover into Sumeria and Babylon. But I also kind of grew up in this occult world in the Celto Nordic perspective for quite some time. Quite a few years spent working in those veins, but my focus has really turned to late antiquity and translating the pieces of the puzzle from that area. And so outside of that right now, Islamic creatures are kind of outside my purview, unless you have like a specific. Like, do you have a specific you'd like to talk about? Like, are you talking about jinn? Because I am not super well versed. I try to speak on the things that I know well rather than just on anything. Nimrod's return, so you understand the meaning behind decapitation. I mean, there could be several. There could be several. The idea of decapitation goes back to the headless ritual, the headless one, which also is Osirian. So depends on what you're talking about there. I'd love to hear more. Go ahead and get at me in the chat. We had way more people than I anticipated today. That's incredible. That's incredible. Almost, we got 62 concurrent viewers right now and almost 474 views. I was not expecting that. I am humbled, guys. Humbled. Do you see the syncretizing of Zeus, Helios, Mithras as a movement towards monotheism? I think so. I think that's what they were aiming at. You have to understand the idea. The idea is apparent in late antiquity. This is a melting pot. It's where people are sharing ideas and they are stealing ideas from each other, and they are taking older ideas and reshaping and reforming them. This syncretization begins way before the Hellenic Age. It's in the New Kingdom, I think, really, where this idea starts to uh, kind of blossom. It comes out of that Amarna period with Akhenaten. It after that kind of outburst of monotheism in Egypt that got crushed. Um, and it got crushed because they were hyper materialistic about it. It wasn't a resistance to the idea of unity. Egyptians, for thousands and thousands of years before then, had an idea of the unity that becomes the many, that the unity is the web that contains all of the many within it. And so it's not that they were against that idea of monotheism in Egypt and or in Greece. It is the violent takeover of the many in service of some kind of like Uber idea that I think most of the people, at least in Egypt, and I think there was a great deal of that resistance in Greece as well, where this idea of only one thing mattering anymore, that is the kind of the source of tension between this idea of monotheism and polytheism, because I don't think they thought that way. I don't think that they thought about um, many gods or one god. They just they saw the one manifesting itself within the many, and those were very interesting, or not interesting, um, intricate portals for accessing the one. So if you were trying to access a certain portion of the one, you would go to a certain portal, and that's what these different deities, these different spirits are for them, is a sacred portal for accessing a particular facet of the one. Thank you, Sharon. I appreciate that. I appreciate all the love I'm getting today. This is awesome. Once they find the Brahman's particle, it's all over. Quantum chip release. Man, it's true. This idea of monotheism too, it's not relegated to Egypt or Greece. You go read the Rig Veda and tell me what you think. I mean, over in India, they are talking about the same thing. So this idea that these cultures were sectioned off from each other or didn't share ideas, we got to get rid of that idea right away. That idea has been implanted in us for so long that I just it's so damaging. We have to we have to get rid of that idea that these cultures were not talking to each other, because they absolutely were. Hail Mary. Yes, hail the veiled mother. Gaia, one of the pieces that I wrote on Substack, and I'll go ahead and pop that over here again. If you guys want to follow me on Substack and read some of the longer form pieces that I've been writing over there, my my inclination is that the suppression is a little bit overstated. Yes, there has been suppression of the divine feminine in modern religion. We continue to see it, but I think also there is an idea of the sacred encoding of that. And so I think that ultimately we might be overstating some of it. We might be overstating some of that suppression and realize that, in Mary, in some of the other women within the Bible, there is that same divine feminine, but it's encoded or veiled. And I think that's because there is mystery tradition to Christianity, and it is different. I don't necessarily. Um, I think that there's just been some weird doctrinal and dogmatic turns in that particular belief set that have kind of leaned toward more of this Oranic excess. Yeah, rebel singularity. I don't believe that the early Christians believed that either. I think they were much more in line with what I'm talking about here. I see extreme parallels between Dionysiac religion and what the emergent Christians are talking about. And there's plenty of other channels talking about that same exact thing here on YouTube. I try not to focus on a lot of the uh, stuff that, say, Gnostic Informant is talking about. He's doing a good job of doing that, but I think that if you really sit down and look at it with an open mind, what you're seeing is the development of the same religion through different cultural perspectives throughout time. It's the same general ideas with people adding their cultural adornments to it. Yes, if everyone on this earth was on our level, they would go on an awakening adventure. I tend to not try to talk about people being on my level. Everybody's on their own journey, but it would be nice if people would be a little bit more open to ideas, but that's a tough thing to do. That's a tough thing to do, and I commend those who are willing to do it, who are willing to go on that journey with an open heart and an open mind. That's not easy to do. Trust me, I know it. I live it. But not everybody's ready for that, and we've got to be patient with them, and that is hard to do as well. Yes, Rosie, we are having another chance. We always have a chance. We have a chance every day to balance ourselves because if we Rebel's going to love this. If we do it ourselves, that's our job. Being concerned with everybody else and what they're doing, not our job. Our job is to do us, lead by that example, and people see that. People see that. Yes, the same story as the Sumerians were telling. It's there. What's the axiom? There is nothing new under the sun. There's just the way we tell the stories. Like this material I'm bringing to you, this isn't me. It's just me relaying the information in the only way that's unique to me, right? It's the same stories that we've been telling each other around campfires for millennia, but each one of us has a different perspective. And that's why I love it when people do challenge me on the channel and drop their wild comments. Go ahead and challenge me. Share your perspective. I might just learn from it. But it in my perspective, it is all the same story with different cultural adornments. It's the same bear wearing different clothes. There's 100 ways I could say that, but there's nothing new under the sun that we're exploring here. It's coming back to light. I'll give you that. It is coming back to light. There are things that have been kind of shadowed and held um, underneath. Um, you know, I don't know if I have the word for it. Think about the primitive people happy they found a log that was on fire. Yeah, fire is very special for us. Go another calling to go back to the Rig Veda and think about the way that they talk about fire, or the way that the Greeks talk about Hestia. Uh, that fiery presence, that is what binds us. Or Plato calls it the ousia. It's the essence, the fire, the first principle. Substrate. That's a good way to. That's a good way. It's the. I tend to think of it as connective tissue, like so. Substrate works. I mean, unless we're talking about like mycelium. Mycelium is the connective tissue that breeds within the substrate. You know what? That's all you got to do, Sharon. Believe in you. Believe in you and do what you're here to do. Yes, Gaia is instigating a revolt as we speak. We hear it in the earth every day. Mm. Yeah, that's why I think the hymns are so important. They transport us, whether it's the Orphic hymns or the hymns of the Rig Veda, the hymns of Psalms. They transport us. They are portals to the modes of consciousness that people before us were living in. One of the things, and I've talked about this a couple of times with some people in private, but also written about it quite a bit lately, is we are no longer functioning on a symbolic consciousness. We are functioning on a hyper rational consciousness. and we have kind of buried ourselves in this hyper rationality, this positive scientific materialist view that we no longer have access to symbolic consciousness unless we work really hard at it. And so when we talk about things like people spiritually awakening, like we're talking about here in the chat, it's people who have reclaimed the capacity or faculty of symbolic consciousness, of being able to read the symbolic language. And when we're looking at these stories, it's very important for us to not look at them literally, but as allegory and symbol. And when you start to be able to read the symbolic language, the language between the lines, you start to see the similarities that they are telling the same stories. We're such a hurrying force. Yeah, we are in a hurry, always in a hurry. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Let's go, go, go. Gaia, Tiamat, they are the same. Tiamat was the first black woman to step foot on this planet. See, and in my video last night, I tried to include diversity here and some inclusion, because I think that these concepts are far beyond the concepts that we deal with. These are metaphysical concepts, and so I tried to show love to all of us here. Descartes, thumbs down. Yes, yes, Descartes, thumbs down. I would say something more choice, but we are on YouTube here, so. She's not a dragon. That's what the religions call her. She's God's wife, and her heel is going to crush the dragon. You know, you. I think there's a way that you can read that as well. You know, she in the iconography of the Great Mother, the draconic milieu is always there. Um, I don't see the draconic idea as something negative, right? I think a lot of people might. They might go, you know, that's evil. I don't tend to think in that way. I tend to think of things as all participating in their own way. Yeah, it is complicated to explain that dragon connection, because people have a bunch of baggage when it comes to that. That symbol means a lot to a lot of people, and over the years, I think it's been twisted to fit particular narratives well, we kind of know what I'm talking about there. It's to instill fear in some way, but really, it's more of a chaotic force that challenges rigid structures of order and produces the opportunity for justified and more refined order to come about. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with being a dragon. It's cool. I mean, I I wouldn't mind being a dragon. I have been before on certain substances. Somebody who I can tell I can tell you I've experimented with those sorts of things. Mm, yeah, dragon is a metaphor for the fish, the spirit, the snake. And, you know, I think that there is some of that. And I'm going to get to this. There is something that's coming up in my research of Gaia and the serpent in the garden. We're not quite there yet, because this series that I've been going through, it's going to take some time to get there, but we will be getting to the Adam and Eve Garden of Eden story and how that relates to Dionysus and his tale within Nonus's Dionysiaca. But there are parallels. There are parallels that we will go into, and that idea of the serpent is linked to Gaia intrinsically. Why do you think the patriarchal society deemed dragons evil? Misunderstood? Yeah, definitely. Yahweh exhibits a lot of the draconic elements. If you look at the tetramorph that we see within the Bible, it's an amalgamation. That's what a dragon is. Like, if you think about it, it is all of those predators that we once feared in the dark when we were sitting around fires, mashed into one being. It is the raw primal force of nature. It is all of those predatory elements. And you see those things mimicked in the tetramorph as well within the Bible. The horns, the fangs, the wings, right? You have the eagle, you have the bull, you have the lion, you have the man. I mean, if you mash those together, how is that not a dragon? Sure seems like one to me. Can we turn into a dragon? You do you. If you, I think, the ideas of turning into something from a shamanistic or an animistic perspective wields very interesting insights into our lives and what we can and can't do. But I tend to work through being a human. That is the mode that I have chosen to be in, as I am manifested here as a human. So I try to do things as much as I can through a human perspective. A balanced human. I'll give you that. Consciousness is a snake. Snakes are symbolically linked to wisdom and consciousness. So I will give you that. Got a couple more minutes here, guys, before I have to run. But if you have any more questions, please feel free to get at me. Um, please leave a comment on this as well. And I am really excited for what we have coming on this channel this year. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited about how many viewers we have today and how awesome you guys have been in the chat. Please feel free to go check out any of my other videos. The Gaia video dropped last night, so if you haven't watched it, go take a look on the channel, go watch it. Drop a comment, a like. Let's engage there as well. Gaia needs our love, and the more we comment and talk on that video, the more that other people will see it on the platform. Same thing, Hail Inanna. Yeah, that one just dropped this last week as well. And if you haven't seen that one, that's a good one to go take a look at and comment and engage in discourse with everybody on the platform. Thank you, Sharon. She says, I've really loved this and I hope you have a lot of luck in the creator. Thank you. I hope so too. I hope so too. I really love doing this, but it's a calling. So as much as it would be nice to fund this venture through this work, that would be awesome if that happens. If that's in the cards, if that's what Mama says, then so be it. But I'm doing it for passion at this point. Hail Medea, Nyx, and the Muses. See, we've got some of Amon's crew joining us. But yeah, hail the divine feminine in all of its many and varied forms, because we need some of that right now. Last call for questions. Get at me. Metallic Pharmakia. Oh, we've got some other live stream chats coming in here. What's the connection of Asherah, who was erased from the Bible, and these goddesses? That's a good question. And I will be getting to the whole Asherah connection eventually. Asherah being, if we're really looking at this connection and how this fits into an Orphic perspective, Zeus is a Yahweh character, right? So Yahweh being a demiurgic creator and someone who takes over his pantheon fits the motif of Zeus to a T. But Asherah was the consort of Yahweh for quite some time before the movement of Yahwehism into a more monotheistic bent. You have to understand that before the Babylonian exile, they were polytheistic. They had other gods and goddesses in the temples. You didn't see Asherah just relegated to the role that we see now, where she's missing, where it's a veiled mother concept. And so the creation or the connection of Asherah would be essentially like a Hera, or almost any of the divine mothers of Zeus, or divine consorts of Zeus. The Greek Orphic pantheons are very robust, whereas the Canaanite is kind of relegated to quite a few less players in the game. Really can't get enough of the Orphic mysteries. Me either. I'm hooked on it. So if you guys like Orphic mysteries, this is the place. Hit subscribe, smash that like button, do all the things they tell you to do on the platform. Give me some love however you can, and we'll just keep this thing rolling. I will go ahead and play our song again because it was so awesome. Here we go.
Mother of gods and mortals, deep bosomed earth. First to rise from night's darkness, giving cosmos birth. They try to chain your power, but your strength remains. Ancient wisdom flowing through these modern veins. Dragon mother rising, feeling your heartbeat. Under concrete jungles where the wild things meet. Your children hear you calling through the urban haze. Time to wake the titans for these latter days. Dragon mother rising, ancient wisdom rising through the concrete. Feel her power rising, can't contain her. Time for sacred rising, stand ever free. All various made with fertile, destroying force. They pave paradise but can't stop nature's course. Your womb still bearing fruit beneath their steel and stone. Every seed a rebel, every tree a throne. Deep in your caves the old gods still hold court, while prophets preach their false report. But we remember how you armed the Titan's hand when heaven's blood watered your sacred land. Rarest say the stars still dance the ancient ways, despite their towers reaching through the haze. Sweet to the smell with your prolific rains, washing clean the empires, breaking their chains. You gave us herbs and crystals, taught us how to heal, showed us sacred circles time cannot steal. Now as the world crumbles, we embrace your might. Dragon mother's children gathering in the night. They thought they could contain you in their books of law, but your power's rising raw and without flaw. Every seed a revolution, every spring your call. Dragon mother rising, watch their kingdoms fall. Eternal blessing, one crown with every grace. Your rebels gather now in every place. From city gardens breaking through their walls to forest stands where ancient wisdom calls. We are your children, born of star and soil, ready for sacred rebellion, ready for toil. The time has come to break their rigid reign. Let Dragon Mother's power flow again. Dragon Mother rising. All parented, bounded, hear your children's call. Sacred rebellion rising through it all. Your wisdom flowing through these urban veins. Dragon mother rising, breaking ancient